Joining me is Kate Horner, Director of the Forest Campaigns at the Environmental Investigation Agency. First of all, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Explain to our audience, I know it's real simple, but what constitutes illegal logging?
Well, thanks for having me. Illegal logging is quite simply logging that takes place in violation of a country's laws. Many countries have in place a number of laws and policies designed to sustainably manage their natural resources, allow them to capture a fair portion of the revenues through taxes, and protect the 1.6 billion people around the world who live in and depend upon the forests. But as has been noted, there is a crisis of illegal logging that continues around the world. Between 50 and 80% of the harvest of timber globally happens illegally, and it's having tremendous social, economic, and social consequences around the world.
I mean, there are so many questions I'm thinking. I mean, first of all, these numbers are shocking. They're really shocking. Who's buying this? Who's buying the illegally logged goods? Because they wouldn't be logging it if no one was buying it.
That's exactly right. In our 25-year history of documenting illegal logging and its impacts and the criminal networks behind it, we have shown unequivocally through our research that it's international demand and international consumption that's driving this illicit trade. So the major consumers of wood products are the US, European Union, China, Japan, Australia, Canada, to name a few.
Well, that's a lot then. If that's that's almost everybody. I mean, everyone's to blame is what you're saying.
Indeed, and we are at a unique moment in international campaigns to save the world's forests and the people who depend upon them, because we've started to recently pass laws that prohibit that import of illegal timber. And that's really a new feature of the international marketplace. The US was the first country to pass a law prohibiting imports of illegal timber in 2008, and it's really begun to fundamentally transform the global timber marketplace.
I mean, to take a step back, I mean, to do illegal logging, it's not like a three-person operation. This involves heavy equipment, this involves investment, money. Shouldn't it be easy to stop these operations? Why is it so hard to do that?
Well, I think that there are a number of factors that contribute to it. One is the logistics of it's happening far away from capitals where many of the enforcement resources exist. So they're outside of the view of generally impoverished countries that don't have the funds to monitor what's happening in the forests. And then I think perhaps more alarmingly is that when these laws are routinely flouted and broken, the revenue fuels corruption and violent conflict. As has been noted in Peru, there were 4 indigenous leaders that were recently murdered because of their attempts to document illegal logging on their lands.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost triadish, if you will. I mean, these are not like good people doing good Samaritan things. You mentioned laws before. Now, I've always said that it's great to have 1,000 laws on the books, but it means nothing if people don't follow the laws. And second, it means even less if the laws aren't enforced. Can we get some enforcement on this? I mean, are you getting, I'm sure this is something you talk about, but are you gaining ground on this topic?
Absolutely. You know, as I said, the US was the first country to pass a law. Europe and Australia are very recently, only in the last year and a half. There have been enforcement actions in the United States that have begun to send a very strong signal that consuming countries will no longer traffic in stolen goods. The first enforcement action was brought against Gibson Guitars, who acknowledged illegally importing high-value timber species from Madagascar.
Well, I was going to say that. I mean, when we go to the store and we buy stuff, for example, and I buy a bed or anything made of wood for that matter, how do I know that this was not from illegal logging?
Well, I think that's exactly right. I mean, we as consumers of these wood products become the unwitting financiers of this devastating crime. And that's why laws and governments are responsible for safeguarding the consumer from participating.
What about the companies? But they're the ones that are...
Absolutely.
They may be looking the other way. I don't want to say they are, but they could be. And shouldn't they be responsible?
And the laws that are on the books that are really transforming practices have begun to generate unprecedented levels of transparency in the supply chain. And many companies are changing their practices as a result of these laws. There are, of course, many companies that continue to roll the dice and source from the riskiest places around the world. And that's where we need a strong, effective enforcement in places like the United States and Europe and other countries that have laws.
Kate Horner, an eye-opening discussion on something we don't talk about very often, but certainly very important. Thank you very much for being here on this topic. Coming up next.